Alrighty. Today we're adding and subtracting fractions with unlike denominators. Sounds like a party. Alright, this should be something you have done for many years, so hopefully you remember. The first step is to find a common, I don't know why I did that, denominator. We cannot add or subtract if we do not have a common denominator. So one of the ways that they show you now is to just multiply the denominators together. 8 times 7, and you get 56. So, what we do is we have to multiply the 8 by what you multiply the 8 by to get to 56. So, 8 times 7 is 56, so we have to multiply it by 7, and what we do to the top, we must do to the top. And then what do we multiply 7 by to get to 56? We multiply it by 8. And again, once you do to the bottom, you do to the top. So, both of those fractions, because it's a number over the exact same number, equals 1. 7 divided by 7 is 1, 8 divided by 8 is 1. Then we're going to multiply those separate terms. So 1 times 7 is 7. 8 times 7 is 56. 2 times 8 is 16. 7 times 8 is 56. So we rewrote with a common denominator. And now because both of those have a denominator of 56, we can add the numerators of 7 and 16 and get 23 over 56. The denominator, once you have found a common denominator, stays like that. Okay? So the same thing applies to subtracting. They might show us a different way to find a common denominator here, though, because it says method 2, but we are subtracting. You follow the same rules. You have to have a common denominator. So we're going to first take our mixed numbers and write them as improper fractions. So the first one, we have 1 times 6 is 6, plus 1 is 7, and we keep our denominator the same of 6. And then the second one, they got 13 over 8 because they did 1 times 8 is 8, plus 5 is 13 over 8. Now we're going to list the multiples. This is a second way to find the common denominator of each denominator and find the LCD. That means least common denominator. So 6. You start with the actual number, 6, and then add that number to itself. So 6 plus 6 is 12. 12 plus 6 is 18. 18 plus 6 is 24. They did not put 18 there. And 24 plus 6 is 30. And then you do the same thing for 8. You start 8, and you add 8 to the number each time. 8 plus 8 is 16. 16 plus 8 is 24. 24 plus 8 is 32. Then you look at those two numbers and you find out what number you have in common that is the smallest. And in this case, we have 24 in common. So, we are going to figure out how do we get from 6 to 24 by multiplication. Well, we have to multiply it by 4. If we do that to the bottom, we do that to the top. Then we have to think, what do we multiply 8 by to get to 24? 3. If we do that to the bottom, we do that to the top. And remember, each one of those is equal to 1 because they have the same number in the top and the bottom. Then we're going to rewrite with a common denominator. So 7 times 4 is 28. 13 times 3 is 39. Okay? Now, because the first number is smaller than the second number, we're going to get a negative number for our answer. So because the first number is positive and the second number is negative, we have opposite signs, which means we can subtract those two numbers. 39 minus 28 is 11, and because 39 has bigger than 28 and has a negative sign in it, we need to remember our negative sign. That is already simplified, so we are good with that answer. On this example, we are going to evaluate. Find an answer, and they're going to give us a value for the variable, which is the letter. So they say evaluate t minus 4/5 for t equals 5/6. So in for t, which is our first term, we're going to put 5 over 6. So we substituted 5/6 for t because it told us to. Now we need to multiply the fractions in order to get a common denominator. Now I'm going to go with method 1 of just multiplying the denominators. 6 times 5 is 30. So I'm going to say that's my lowest common denominator, or the one I want to go for. So 6 times what gets me to 30? 5. So I multiply both by 5. And 5 times what gets me to 36. So I'm going to multiply both by 6 over 6. And those fractions equal 1. So now we're going to rewrite with a common denominator. Oh, and look, it already says down here 6 times 5 equals 30. I think I got ahead of ourselves, right? 5 times 5 is 25. I don't know why this keeps moving my screen. 6 times 5 is 30. Then 4 times 6 is 24. And 5 times 6 is 30. Because the first number is bigger than the second number, it's going to be a positive answer. So we just have 25 minus 24. That equals 1. And our denominator stays the same. Example 3. 2 dancers are making necklaces from ribbon for their costumes. They need pieces measuring 13 3/4 inches and 12 7/8 inches. How much ribbon will be left over after the pieces are cut from a 36-inch length? The first thing we're going to do is we're going to add to find the length of the 2 pieces. I mean, it tells us to do that right there, right? So we're going to take 13 3/4 plus 12 7/8, and we're going to write those as improper fractions. So 13 3/4 becomes 55 over 4, and 12 7/8 becomes 103 over 8. Now, the common denominator of 4 and 8 is 8, and hopefully you know that because 4 goes into 8 evenly. So if one of the numbers goes into the other number evenly, the bigger number is the least common denominator. So in order for us to get from 4 to 8, we have to multiply by 2. So we have to multiply the 55 by 2, and we get 110. Now because the second fraction already has a denominator of 8, we don't have to do anything to it. Then we can add 110 and 103, and we get 213 over 8, and if you were to divide that out, you get 26 5/8. So the length of the 2 ribbons is 26 5/8 inches. Now find the amount of ribbon left over, because they want to know if I add these 2 pieces of ribbon together to make my necklace, how much do I have left over from a 36-inch piece of ribbon? So we take the 36 minus the 26 5/8. We want to make 36 a fraction, so anytime we have a whole number, we put it over 1. And then we need to change the 26 5/8 into an improper fraction, which is 213, which you should have remembered from before if you wrote out the problem. Now, the least common denominator of 1 and 8 is 8. 1 goes into 8, so the larger number has to be it. So 1 times 8 is 8, so we have to multiply the 1 by 8 and the 36 by 8. 36 times 8 is 288. And again, the first number is bigger than the second, so it's going to be a positive number, so we can subtract those 2 numbers and get 75 over 8. Or, in this case, because it's talking about a length, we actually do want to change it to a mixed number, because 75/8 doesn't really tell us anything. But if we know it's 9 3/8, we know how much we have left, and that's going to give us a better description. Okay, do the check it out problems, don't take forever.